Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Chargers, we're glad to have you back again this week for another great podcast. I love sharing different guests with different viewpoints to allow you to really grow your businesses and grow yourself. That's the really key, because Charge is about creating habits around real goals every day. And I'm excited to have our guest today. Michael Zipursky is the CEO of Consulting Success, where they specialize in helping entrepreneurial consultants grow profitable, scalable, and strategic consulting businesses. He has been advised organizations like Financial Times, the Dow Jones, RBC, and helped Panasonic launch new products into global markets. But more importantly, he's helped over 500 consultants from around the world in over 75 industries add 6 and 7 figures their annual revenues. Over 35,000 consultants read his weekly consulting newsletter. Michael, it is great to have you on the Charge Podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Gary. Great to be with you.
Well, it is great to have you here. And I love always getting different viewpoints, because for business owners, they can learn from people doing different things. And you're in the consulting area. And I think that's going to be a great topic to allow them, number one, to see how does consultants work, but also how could they maybe do some consulting in their practices that they're in, Michael. So we'll get into that. But first, I always love to start back from a little bit more of the beginning, because we're entrepreneurs and we get on podcasts and we share our expertise. But the thing is, we had a journey to get to where we're at today. And I would like you to share me a little bit of that story, if you would, what really brings you into this business and makes you that expert in your area of expertise.
Yeah, no, happy to share. Thanks so much for that intro there, Gary. So I've been building consulting businesses for the last almost 22 years. Started just really early in university with my cousin and business partner, Sam. We've built and sold different businesses over the years, but we just really started to apply our knowledge, our interest, initially in the area of design and branding. And so we had a consultancy around that while I was in university. And a few years later, we started another consulting business, this time much more focused on the marketing side of kind of branding and communications. And I went over to Japan to open up a branch office for that company. Ended up working with some of the organizations that you mentioned, but many other large ones like Sumitomo and Omron and a whole bunch of others, that really to help them to communicate more effectively to English-speaking marketplaces. And so that was a really great experience, a challenging experience in many ways. Here I was, a 20-year-old kid, essentially running a consulting business and working with and advising organizations boardrooms where people were much my senior. So I was in my 20s. There were people around me who were in their 50s, 60s, in some cases even 70s. But I loved every minute of it, because I loved the challenge. I loved learning more about the culture and the language. And so fast forward, a few years. I guess 6 years after building that business in Japan, I'd come back to North America, and Sam and I were sitting at a family barbecue because we had been doing different things for a period of time. And we said, hey, we should do something together again, but let's do something this time online, because we both really love travel. We wanted to be able to live and work from anywhere in the world and just kind of really be the masters of our own destiny. And so we decided to take our years of experience building consulting businesses and develop a website where we would just share, content, articles, of what we had learned, the good, the bad, the ugly, really stories from the trenches around building a successful consulting business, in the hopes that it would save other people from making many of the mistakes that we'd made, but also to just kind of fast track and accelerate their success in the consulting space. And so we just started to see a lot of interest in that content, and people said, hey guys, this is really great articles and resources, but do you have a course where I can learn to become a successful consultant? And we said, no, we don't, but we'll create one. And so we did. And then people said, this is a really great course. I'm now at 6 figures in revenue, or I feel much more confident or clear. I really feel like I'm in a better place than where I was before. This course has helped me so much, but can I work closely with you as a way to have some coaching with you guys. And he said, well, we don't have a coaching program, but we'll create one. And so that's what we did. And so here we are about 13 years after that point of consulting success being around. We've worked with several thousand consultants who have gone through our training programs, worked about 600 or so consultants personally through our Clarity coaching program, really helping them to build more strategic and profitable consulting businesses.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because that really helps us on the journey that we're going to go. And I will tell people, if they're sitting here and saying, well, I'm a business owner, but I'm not in consulting business, I would tell you, hang on, because some of those lessons that you learn through consulting, you may be able to apply in your business. And so it will apply, and I will tell you, so make sure you stay and listen through the whole thing, because I think you're going to see that. But before we go there, just as you were discussing this, I have to ask this question, because I know I've got some younger generation that listens to my podcast too. You talked about in your 20s of dealing with people in the boardrooms that were in 50s, 60s, and 70s, and in a totally different language and country. So I have to ask this now, and later I ask the biggest life lesson. I'll make you come up with a different one there. What was really the biggest lesson that you learned with communicating them? Because you were trying to help them with communicating more the English speaking language people, but what did you learn about them that helped you to communicate better with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that, as you were saying, that for everybody, hold on, if you're not a consultant, this podcast will still be relevant to you. The same skill set is really what helped me at that time, which is listening, right? So I found that many people around me, who might go and spend time in a different country, don't really take time to listen. They're not paying attention. And so they say things like, yeah, this language is so hard to learn, or I find this culture so challenging, I just don't get it. But it's because they haven't taken the time to really listen. And so I would just listen a lot to different people. I mean, I really enjoyed going out with people to these little izakayas, like they're little kind of, bars where you go and you have some food and a drink. Back in the day, they'd be filled with smoke all the time, which I didn't like because I'm not a smoker, but it was still part of the experience. And I would just ask questions and I would listen, and I would learn so much by asking. And that's actually one of the most important traits of a successful consultant that I think 100% can be applied to any entrepreneur. That if you want to be more effective in negotiation, you have to learn to ask great questions and then listen. If you want to be able to, land larger deals, or if you want to be able to bring on better people, you have to learn to ask great questions and then to listen. And so often I think people are always rushing, where they're not taking time to listen, but you can learn far more by listening than you can by speaking.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because I just think it's so crucial, because I get so many times people in their business, they say they've got a challenge within their business and it's normally tied into something else. And a lot of times it's just tied straight to communication. And I think you make a great point of listening allows you that capability of really learning from them. I could have passed over that, but I was listening, trying to be intent, and we have to be present. We've talked about, we're cutting this on a Monday. You may be listening to it on a Monday, but we're cutting this on a Monday. But the thing is we have to be present in that present moment to be able to listen, to be able to ask those great questions, and kind of leads me right in. So really it's a good lead in to my first question to you, because we all make these big mistakes when we're trying to really, people, when they want to become a consultant, they make mistakes, and we make them in business too. And that's where I think it's going to apply over in those different areas. But what do you see the biggest mistakes that people make when they become consultants?
Yeah. So I hope you don't mind, Gary. I'm going to just pull us back for 1 second, then feel free to yank me right back forward, because one thing that you said that I hope will help people out there. You're talking about when I was in that situation, younger, with older people, different culture, different language. And you said that everyone in business, right, we all deal with challenging situations. Well, one of the things that I think got me through that point was also recognizing the grass is always greener, right? Like you have that mindset. So I could look at my situation and go, oh, I'm young. That's why I'm not doing well right now, or that's why I'm stressed, or I have anxiety. But then you talk to somebody who's older and they're thinking, well, I'm not doing as well because I have all these young people running circles around me with all their energy. So I think it's always perspective, right? And in business, it's so important to just slow down and look at, okay, this might be a challenging situation that I'm in right now, but what can I do to find creative ways to actually get out of the situation? Or how can I turn this negative into a positive? And I think that as you become more successful, or you just have more experience in the world of business, you recognize that you're always going to have challenges. It doesn't matter whether you're running a $100,000 business, $1 million business, $100 million business, $1 billion business, you still have challenges, but it's that shift in perspective is really important to keep you moving forward. Now, back to your question, So for consultants, what are common mistakes that people make? I think one of the biggest ones for early stage consultants, and in some cases, even those that have been consulting for a period of time, is that they go far too broad in terms of who their ideal clients are. They're not clear, what we call ideal client clarity. And this is very common if you're coming from a corporate background or you've been doing a lot of different things. You have a lot of skills, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. And so being able to take that and say, well, I'm only going to work with this one type of client is a real challenge, because human psychology tells you that really the way to grow is by doing more, right? You want to expand to achieve growth. But if you look at the most successful companies in all different industries, most of them achieve success by subtraction, not by addition. And when you're early stage as a consultant, and again, in many cases, any business, you really want to be able to create differentiation and make a name for yourself and have focus. And you can only do those things if you're being very specific about who you want to work with. And so in the consulting world, if you're not clear on your ideal client, then you're going to find it very challenging to have any form of marketing work for you. Because if you don't know who your ideal client is, you're going to try and cast a very wide net, which means that your messaging is going to be all over the place, right? It's going to be all scrambled up. You're going to be trying to, talk to all different types of people with one message. And that most likely means that one message won't resonate with any of those people because it doesn't speak directly to them. Now you flip that over, right? The opposite is that I'm going, okay, yeah, I'm focusing on entrepreneurs like Gary that run podcasts and are in Missouri. If I said, hey, if you're in Missouri and you have a podcast and you're an entrepreneur, like boom, it's going to get your attention because I'm speaking directly to you. But if I just said, yeah, this is, for entrepreneurs, it may or may not, because there's a lot of noise in the marketplace right now where people are essentially saying all the same thing. They're casting a really wide net. When you're clear on your ideal client, then you're able to go, okay, I can develop a message to speak directly to their problems and to the desires and the goals that they have. And now my marketing will start working because I can actually put a message in front of these people and it will resonate with them. But if I'm not doing that, it's going to be very challenging to get their attention. And if you don't get their attention and interest, it's very challenging to have conversations.
So right there, you allowed us to frame it up, just like I told you we talked about, is because this fits anyone. We said for small businesses. So as a small business, okay, you may not be in the consulting business, but the question I would ask you, do you know your ideal client? Or do you serve everyone? Because what we tend to do, if we have a restaurant or we have a service-based business, we may know that we're in heating and cooling, but we serve everyone. Well, who truly is your client? How can you get down to that ideal client side? Instead, you think, oh, we've got to serve everyone. We've got to be in the commercial side as well as the residential side in heating and cooling. I'm just using that as an example, that we have to be in all these different markets. But really, what is the market you want to serve? What is your niche into that market? Because I guarantee you, no matter where you live, there's multiple heating and cooling companies, especially in Missouri, because we have heat and cool. We need both sides. Some places only have the cool side. Someday maybe live there, but run out right now. So how are you really creating that? So I really appreciate you sharing that. And that's where I just want to kind of make that leverage over, as we talked about in the very get-go. This is going to still apply to you because we may be talking about consulting, but it's a consulting about in your business. It's really a way that you can really look at, am I being a consultant in my own business of looking at what those clients are? So I really appreciate you sharing that, Michael.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Well, the other area I think everybody wants, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, they want to increase fees. So the challenge that you get into is, how can you earn more by actually working with less clients? And you're able to earn more. Share me your philosophy behind that.
Yeah. So really the shift here that people want to make is from charging on an hourly basis, where essentially you're connecting your time to a dollar value, more to looking at everything that you're creating for a client, the outcome that you're producing, the results that you're generating. You're focusing on what is the value of that and what is the return on investment for the client. And so it's easy to just say that, but it really needs to run through everything that you do, from the initial conversation that you have with a buyer to even before the conversation, to your marketing materials, to your content creation. When you focus on value and the return on investment for that buyer, for that client, they actually start to see that what you're doing is, yes, they understand they're going to be making an investment, but no longer do they just view it as a cost, right? If you are charging on an hourly basis, then it's like, time and materials, it's it's a commodity, right? I can get one consultant. Well, how much does that consultant charge? Oh, they charge $100 an hour. Oh, the other one charges 150. Oh, it's a lot more than the other one, right? It's not, you don't need to be focused on the number of hours, because a client is not paying you for your hours. I mean, if you're charging on an hourly basis, yes, they are paying you for your hours, but that's not what they want. No one goes, oh yeah, I want 3 hours of a consultant's time. That's not why they hire you. They hire you because they have a problem or a desire and they want an outcome. They want a result. And so the whole problem with hourly fees is that if you become better as a consultant, and let's say that something used to take you 10 hours before to complete, and now you actually, because of your knowledge and your skills and your experience and your expertise, you can actually create that same outcome for a client in 3 hours. Well, that's a big savings of time. But if you're charging on an hourly basis, it means you're going to be making significantly less than you were before, because it's now only 3 hours as opposed to 10. But the client is getting the result significantly sooner than they would have previously. Now, for most companies and organizations, if they can increase their productivity, if they can increase their sales, if they can decrease employee turnover, or whatever it is that you're helping them to resolve, if they can see the impact of that sooner, that's actually, more beneficial to them. They should be paying a premium for that, because they're getting the result that they want. It's going to have an impact on their business or on their organization if they're a nonprofit sooner than if they waited longer. And so that's really where this old mindset of hourly fees butts heads with the real value creation that is occurring. And so the way to earn more while working less or with fewer clients is just simply to make the value of every client greater by charging more. And the way that you charge more is by getting very clear on the value that you are creating. And as I mentioned again, it's related to everything that you do, your content, your conversations, your proposal, the way you're structuring your fees, right? The way that you're talking about those. And so if you learn to ask great questions, you can identify the value and the return on investment that your ideal client is desiring or is thinking about. Once you've hit on that, once you've identified what they really care about, then you're able to start to put that into terms of, well, what is the value of that, right? How does that impact your business? Why do this now? What happens if you wait? What else will happen? Like, you can go deeper and deeper to really uncover the core of what's going to move them beyond just the logic of, oh yeah, we want to increase our sales. It's like, well, why do you want to do that? And if you do that, what will happen? So as you go deeper and deeper into this conversation and really hit on, as I kind of call it, Gary, it's like you're peeling back the layers of the onion to get to the core. And so what a lot of people do is they'll just gloss over and stay at a surface level. But the real value is always at the core. So you have to ask more questions to get deeper. Once you've identified that, now you're able to communicate that back in your conversation, in your proposals, in everything that you do, which will allow you to earn significantly more. We had one client, just to give a quick example of this, who is planning to charge an organization $65,000 or $60,000 for doing some consulting work. Well, we talked about it, and I really asked, well, what is the value? What are looking to create? What's the potential return on investment here for this organization? Well, she went back, increased her fees to close to $300,000, exact same amount of work and hours and time, but she landed it at that higher level because she was talking about value. She wasn't just talking about hours any longer. So it is a shift in mindset. It's a shift in communication. But once you do it, you'll never go back.
Yeah. And that becomes the real key, because in business today, anyone can do it cheaper. So, you're really a commodity all the time if all you're talking about is price. Because of course you've got the big box stores, you've got the big A, keep naming names of all these large companies. They're going to beat you every time on price. Yep. But value creation that you talked about, and when you're clear on your value creation, again, any business this applies to, because what is your value creation that you have that's there? And I loved how you talked about what is the problem you solve, what's the desire that your really client wants, and then what's the resultant outcome from that comes from it. I mean, just really makes a lot of sense to me, Michael, because, when business owners think about it, they always think about, well, how can I charge more? And, we're all being challenged right now with increased prices. And how can I pass them on to my clients? How can I pass them on? Well, we're not thinking the right thing. Instead, how can we create that value creation within our business and really getting crystal clear? I loved how you said that, getting clear on what that value proposition is. Well, I think the other thing that kind of runs into this as I think about this, because of course normally people have teams. They're normally not that solo entrepreneur that they're doing it, and they have teams that's working on it. What do you think is the first steps as you're trying to build that effective team to focus on those highest value activities that you want to create in an organization?
Yeah, the first thing that we do, Gary, with all of our clients when they're looking to start, scaling up and building teams and kind of going from a solo consultant what we call an entrepreneurial consultant, right, into becoming a kind of an entrepreneurial consulting firm, it really comes down to beginning with taking inventory, right? So you don't want to go off and start hiring a bunch of people. You want to get clear on where you're spending your time. And when you take that inventory, you're going to look for things like, where are you spending your time that is not enjoyable, right? You're doing things that you just don't enjoy doing. You're going to be doing things that aren't really that valuable, but they need to get done. Administration, emails, scheduling, sending invoices, doing research, formatting a PowerPoint or a document, playing with a design, updating text on your website. These are all things that many entrepreneurs will spend time on, and they'll tell themselves things like, well, yeah, it doesn't take me, it's just 5 minutes here or there, or I can do it faster than trying to teach somebody else or train somebody else on how to do this. Or, yeah, but I don't want to go out and spend money to hire someone, because I can do it myself. And I want to take that money and put it in my pocket. Right. These all make sense. The challenge is that if you have that mindset, you're never going to grow. You're never going to, I shouldn't say you never can, because there are some consultants who are able to still generate, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even $1 million as a solo independent consultant. We have actually many clients like that. But inevitably, if you want to be able to make a greater impact, or you want to be able to grow beyond that level, you can't do it all yourself. And so once you take this inventory, the goal of that kind of exercise is to identify low value tasks and high value tasks. The low value tasks, right, are things that you shouldn't be doing because you can pay somebody less than your value to do them for you. There are also things you typically don't enjoy. And so that frees you up now to have more joy, more fulfillment in your day. But it also now allows you to spend more time on the high value tasks, which are things that are going to move the needle, right? They're things like negotiating, or having conversations with real buyers, or speaking, or conducting a workshop, things of that nature that can really help you to grow your business. And so the goal, first of all, is to identify what's going on, where are you spending your time, and then to also look at your strengths and your weaknesses and figure out, well, who do you need? And so for many people, the first hire might just be a virtual assistant or some kind of an assistant that can take off that administrative type of stuff. Then you might go and think, well, I want somebody to help me with sales, or I want somebody to help me with delivering the service or the work that we're doing. So it just depends on the model that you're choosing, but it all begins by taking this inventory, because almost in all cases, and this is actually an exercise that is good for people to do on an ongoing basis, you'll always find that little things just creep into your calendar and you don't even know about them sometimes. You're not conscious. But if you take this inventory and just stop and ask yourself, what have I been doing over the last week or so? Where have I been spending my time? You'll almost always identify things that you should not be doing yourself, and that somebody else can do them either better than you can, or in almost all cases, significantly cheaper than you can. And I'll give you a quick example of this. Some people will say, well, I don't want to bring somebody on because it's going to cost me money, to bring somebody on. Well, for $50 an hour, $50 an hour, you can find exceptional talent. Just really great talent that can help you in almost every area that you can imagine. So some people will go, well, that's $50 an hour that I'd be losing if I bring somebody on. But the challenge with that, and where I think that thinking is off, is that if, let's just say you've identified that your value itself is $250 an hour. I don't mean that you're charging $250 an hour. I mean that when you look at what you want to be earning, the total value, you look at your annual revenue and so forth, is $250, or you want it to be the equivalent of $250 an hour. Well, every hour that you are doing that low value work yourself, you're actually losing $200 an hour, right? Because you could pay somebody $50, your value is $250. So that means you're actually losing $200 every single hour in value creation. And so it's the shift in mindset from going, well, yeah, of course, I could maybe do it faster initially myself. And of course, yes, I will need to train people. And there is a process around that and managing all that kind of stuff. But if you really want to be able to make a greater impact and grow to that next level, you can't do it all yourself. And so that's the path to kind of begin that initial exercise to get clear on where to hire and where to put people.
Well, I love that, Michael. And you're really talking a language you and I are just love how this is framed up, because it's making business owners, consultants, all those people think differently for their business. And, the challenge is we all can name, there's some painful and exhausting things that we take care of in our business. And I loved how you frame that up as low value or high value task. And is it a low value task really that anyone could do, but you're doing it right now? And I loved how you framed up at the end. It's about that dollar cost, because you may be paying $50 someone else, but if you're earning $250, you're losing if you're taking care of those small tasks. And the other challenge it creates, especially in smaller businesses, and a lot of consulting businesses or smaller organizations, it creates burnout. So we wonder why we get exhausted, because we're doing all these things we do not like to do. Put me in front of a client. I'm sure Michael and I are both the same way. And man, the energy level goes up, and we could do that all day long. But put us doing these tasks of setting up these podcasts, I'll be honest, I don't do that. I have someone else handles that side of it. I show up here at what time it is to do the podcast. I have some notes and stuff. I've done some review and checked out his website, but I did the things that was 10, 15 minutes, and then I'm able to complete my task. So I think that's really what it comes down to. And we all have that in our business. And I think that's the key, is how can we make it, number one, it makes it more fun. I'm sure for yourself, Michael, this part of it, of the job, this is a high value task that you truly enjoy doing, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to find somebody on their deathbed going, oh, like, I wish I just worked harder to make more money. No one cares about that, right? It's you look back and you potentially regret that you didn't spend time with loved ones, or you didn't spend time trying to realize your full potential, or pushing past fears or challenges that you had. And so I think that, you want to be spending your days doing things that you enjoy, not trying to overwhelm yourself or extend yourself or pull yourself when you don't need to. And so if you want to be strategic about growing a business, you got to recognize you can't do everything yourself. And so you just start one by one, picking apart. And just to kind of make one distinction, Gary, when I said a low value task, it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It just means that it's low value to you.
Right.
Right. So someone else can do a great job, and to that other person, that low value task to you is a high value task to them. That's great, because that's where they should be. So you want to identify what's high value for you, so you can play in the zone that you really enjoy.
Yeah. Because I'll give you an example for me is like process, to be able to create this process for the podcast. I wasn't the one that did that. It's a very high value task because I want to be able to continue the podcast, but I was able to give that to someone else versus me sitting there painfully and exhausting saying, okay, first we've got to do this, then we've got to do that. Instead, I had someone else create that. And of course, it's a high value task to them because they're really good at that. I'm not. So that's a perfect example. Thanks for sharing that. Well, Michael, I know we could go on forever because you and I just have that business background that we really enjoy. And I'm glad how we was able to really let people think if they're in a consulting business, you do have some tools. And this may even help people that if they're in their own business, take a look at. And you said you have a kind of a 47-page blueprint that you're willing to share with our audience and stuff. Why don't you give them that, and I'll share your website. But before I let you go, you got to go to the recharge round too. So don't leave me after that, but I'll let you share that now. So if they get that information, be great. And then we'll give it at the very end of the podcast also.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Gary. Thank you. We compiled our most popular articles, best practices, resources around building a successful consulting business. And so if you want to get that consulting blueprint, you can go to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint, and you'll get access to that right away.
And some great information there. And if you want to check out their website, just go to consultingsuccess.com. We'll have all that in show notes because we know some people may be exercising, running, they may be cutting grass, whatever it is at this time of the year that you're doing. That's activity, because a lot of times I know I listen to quite a few podcasts when I'm sitting on the riding lawnmower, cutting my lawn and being able to do other things. And it's hard to write it down at that time. So if you go to chargepodcast.com, all those notes will be in there. But Michael, before I let you go, I ask every guest the same 3 questions because the first one is all about my podcast. The name is Charge, and it's for a reason. It's create habits around real goals every day. What habit or habits do you think has led to success in your life?
The biggest one is probably commitment. And when I mean that, it's other words that come to mind are consistency. But it's really this idea of when you commit to something that's meaningful for you, then you don't give up on it. And this has been true for me from a young age when I played sports. I was very competitive. And when you want to win the game, you're not going to stop until they blow the whistle and the game is done. And you may have won, you may have lost, but like you gave it your all. And that doesn't happen all the time. To be very transparent, not every single day do I go, I gave it 100% today. But I do my best. And I think overall, because that's the other thing is that the kind of the game of business is not a short term, it's a long term. And so you want to play it and recognize you're going to have ups and downs. But when I set my mind to something, then I'm going to make sure that it gets done.
Excellent. I share with my audience this simple positive action that we can do each day to kind of really move forward in our life and really be able to accomplish the things that we want to achieve, our goals and piece of that. And that kind of acronym is SPA. I like acronyms. So simple positive action. What's a simple positive action you do to help you move forward each day?
Yeah, so I'll give you two. The first is, as soon as I wake up, it's just gratitude. I think to myself, what is one thing that I'm grateful for today? And it's amazing how that just puts your mind in a positive kind of place. And so now you're off to the races for the day, right? Beginning positive as opposed to negative. The second thing is always looking at what is the priority item that I want to get done today, right? So there's a lot of different things that will come up, but if I can get done one key thing and I'm looking at and prioritizing that and beginning with that, then I know I'm going to make significantly more progress than the average person, because so often we have a big to-do list and we start with the things that are easiest. Well, the things that are easiest in almost all cases are the things that aren't going to help us as much as the things that are harder. And so that action of kind of getting clear on what is the priority item and then making sure that either myself or the team, if I'm delegating it, but making sure that it's getting done is critical.
Okay, great. Appreciate you sharing that. Now, I asked you one big lesson that you learned, but that was in a specific area. Now I'm just overall in your life. What's the biggest life lesson you learned and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I may have kind of mentioned something that earlier on that's a big one for me, but that the perspective is so important. I think so. I'll just, if you don't mind, Gary, I'll just come back to this. I may try and hit it from a different angle, but I think so often, we face challenges. And if I look at what separates those who struggle from those who succeed in business, it's that those who struggle will get hit by some kind of a challenge. And as soon as that challenge hits you, you become prone to paralysis. And you look at yourself and go, well, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't this work? You take on a negative mindset or attitude, and then things just start to crumble. And for many people, that can be very jolting to the point of actually going, yeah, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And they give up. Or even more common is something you tried doesn't work. And then right away, you just go, oh, I'll try something completely different without really sticking to what you started. And so for me, what I always try and do, and this is something that I've developed over the years, but have found to be very helpful, is that any challenging situation that comes our way or comes my way, I just try and ask myself, well, okay, great. This is the challenge. Now, what's a different perspective? How can I look at this from a different angle? And how can we turn this, lemon into lemonades? How can we, what is the positive of this situation? Because there's always going to be something positive if you're open to seeing it. And when I look at those who succeed, they're encountering the same number of challenges as those who are struggling, if not more, because they're taking more action. But they've just become used to that is part of the game. That is part of your life. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to consistently face challenges. And so just knowing that they're going to be around every single corner and you're going to have to deal with them. Now it becomes something that you don't run from anymore. You welcome, you deal with it, you keep moving on. And that just makes you stronger and stronger. And, if you think about the laws of compounding in the investment world, well, it's the same thing in business. You're just going to be compounding all these different challenges that you've had. And every single challenge that you have, you could look at it as going, well, that's a mistake, that's a failure. Or you could just go, that's a lesson, but now it's made me stronger. And you keep doing that and you just get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I love that. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I tell you, I think that's what our audience needed to hear today, is really realizing whatever challenge you're facing today, and somebody out there, everyone's got a different one that they're facing. Look at it at a different perspective. I really appreciate Michael saying that. Look at it from a different vantage point. And I can't tell you, when you come out of that different vantage point, it's still going to be a challenge, but it's going to give you that opportunity and that capability to see that clarity we talked about a little bit earlier, and you're going to be able to tackle that. If you can't, then seek someone out that can help you find that other clarity for you. Because when we get dug into our own challenges and own problems, of course, what happens? We love to give ourselves our own pity party. Instead, that's why you're listening to this podcast. Today, there was something that Michael said that resonated with you that now you can put into practice that can change maybe that challenge that you're having. Michael, I truly appreciate your time on the Charge podcast. This has been great. Share with them again how they can get the information that you have available and also your website.
Sure. Yeah. So that consulting blueprint, if you want to learn how to start, run, and grow a successful consulting business, you can go to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint. And we have the Consulting Success podcast. about 1,000 articles, resources, videos, a lot of stuff over the last 13 years available, much of it for free at consultingsuccess.com.
So check them out. They're also on any social media. We'll have all those links in our show notes at chargepodcast.com. Please check them out. Michael, again, can't thank you enough for saying yes to the Charge Podcast.
Gary, thanks so much. Really great to be with you.
Chargers, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you take away and I hope you get greater clarity in your business of who your ideal client is and really decide who do you want to serve. Because when you serve them, guess what happens? It differentiates you in the marketplace and you can charge more for your services. Instead of being on that hourly basis, you now can charge for the value that you give each and every time. So Chargers, come back next week. We'll have another great podcast guest. Thanks for joining us today and make it a great day.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.